This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Luke Sylvia and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is August 8th, 2022. Jonathan Osborne here. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Luke Sylvia. Luke, what's going on, bro? How are you?
I'm good. This is your Luke's birthday countdown. We are about three weeks and a day away. So that's that. I mean, other than that, man, it's I'm good. It's Florida. It's hot outside, and then it rains, and then it's humid and hot. It's just the cycle of life in Florida. So it's good to be back. We've been officially back for a month and a half now, or 2 months. That's kind of crazy. We moved on June 9th, so almost 2 months. So time is flying, and then baby due in October, and all that fun stuff. It's going to be a busy next few months for sure.
Absolutely is. So we've got a banger of an episode for you. Shout out to Tim the Tap Man. We are going to get into our favorite 10 Magic players of all time on this episode. This might be the one where Luke and I come to blows or fisticuffs, I should rather say. Anyways, we're going to talk about that. There's definitely it's going to get heated. I already tell. Luke gets really disrespectful about one of the players in my top 10. It's going to get, let's preface this. It is not top 10 best, it's top 10 favorite. And
there needs to be disclaimers all over everything, but yes.
Yes. This is just personal preference. We're going to go through that personal preference. Some of it's going to be talent. Some of it's going to be obviously not talent. It's just kind of going to be all over the place. The heartstrings, all that good stuff. So we're definitely going to get into that. Just a couple of housekeeping items this week. So we know that you guys always show up on YouTube in the listens, the downloads, everything like that. But if you were not aware for whatever reason, you can find us on Twitter, you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on TikTok at Sixth Man Show. You can find us at Facebook, facebook.com/The Sixth Man Show. You can also find us on YouTube. If you're listening to this and you didn't know we're on YouTube, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/The Sixth Man Show. So if you're on any of those platforms, go ahead and give us a nice subscribe, a nice follow, review, all that kind of good stuff. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, you can leave us ratings. So all of that is a really big help. And then today, the 8th, I think you can still vote today. I think you can still vote for OrlandoWeekly.com's Best of 22 ballot. If you want to vote for us, we've been nominated for Best Local Podcast in Orlando. So if you go to voteorlandoweekly.com, underneath Local Notables, you can find The Sixth Man Show. Throw us a vote for Best Local Podcast. I don't know when we're going to hear the results on that, but hoping it'd be really cool to be recognized as Orlando's Best Local Podcast. I don't know that we are, but to be voted, that would be really, really cool. Last but not least, we're going to go ahead and shout out our Hall of Fame tier patrons, starting with Court Cousins, Armin, Elite Tulo, Jonathan Borges, Magic Player History, Wiffle, Michael Salapong, Ryan Singh, The Distract, Pierre A., Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Lil Penny Drum, Danimal, Dutto15, Bobby Skinner, Nate Donnelly, Gotti93. Each of these folks helps financially support the show through our Patreon channel, which is patreon.com/The Sixth Man Show. 3 tiers of benefits that you all can choose from and help support the show, so we really appreciate your help. Luke, a little bit of Magic news. So our own Jonathan Isaac, friend of the podcast, showed up to the Orlando Magic Youth Camp this week, met with some kids, messed around with them, answered some questions that they had, and he was also, talking, basically, I think it was with Dan Savage, if I'm not mistaken, of OrlandoMagic.com, and was, asked about his rehab. And this is what he had to say. The light is at the end of the tunnel now. I'm feeling great. I can see it, and I'm pushing every day. Luke, how does that make you feel?
Is it wrong to say it doesn't make me feel much?
No, it is not.
I mean, he's been saying he'd be good to go at Christmas and opening. He's been saying he's good forever. So hopefully this light at the end of the tunnel he's speaking of is number one, actually close to him. And number two, the team actually believes this. I need a team rep to say that. Now, there's a lot of people on Twitter that talk about Jonathan Isaac. He's not gonna play. Like, I wouldn't expect him to play opening night. I understand the skepticism, but I'm gonna choose to be optimistic. And based on what we've heard and things that we kind of we're like Sherlock Holmes trying to gather clues over here as to what we have to do with the staff in general in this front office. I'm hopeful that we see him opening night. Are you hopeful, or are you trying to like reserve any feelings from being hurt on opening night if he doesn't come off the bench in that game and play?
I would say we have blind optimism because we don't really have a real reason to be optimistic because we've heard this. It feels like 3 or 4 times now throughout the rehab process for Jonathan Isaac. Tore his ACL pretty close to 2 years ago to the day, and we haven't seen him play basketball. So we've heard this, he's progressing, he's feeling great, so on and so forth. We still haven't seen him on the floor. I don't know what to expect. We're just in uncharted waters here in terms of this type of injury and him being held out this long. So I'm taking it day by day. If we hear tomorrow that he's going to be back for opening night, that's great. If we don't hear anything, I'm not going to feel one way or the other about it. Now, as we get to like media day, which we'll talk about in just a moment here, by then, like media day, the very next day starts training camp. If we don't have he's good for training camp at that point, then I'm probably going to start to feel worse about myself. Not that it has anything to do with me, but my mental health is unhealthily connected to this team, and that's kind of how I feel about it. I don't think you're wrong to not be moved by those comments, although we hope they are true.
Right, of course, we hope they're true. But my thing is, if Jonathan Isaac isn't playing, even on a minute restriction, which we expect, like 20-minute minute restriction opening night, are you thinking they're being just extra cautious with J.I., or are you maybe like some fans saying they've already taken a look at next year's draft prospects and they're already doing this? They're holding out players and they're doing this. Which side do you err on when it comes to Jonathan Isaac and his availability opening night?
Opening night, I expect them to handle it the same way they did with Markelle.
Right.
Now, if J.I. isn't playing and like Markelle Fultz isn't in the starting lineup opening night, then I'm like, all right, what is happening? Yeah. It is far too early to be, exhibiting this kind of behavior. But no, I think it's just they're gonna bring him back really slowly. They're gonna be really careful with him. Now, by January, February, like around the All-Star break, that's when we should start to see the minutes. All right, we're gonna play 25, and he's gonna be on a 25-minute restriction for a couple of weeks. And then, all right, let's see how you feel at 30. And if he's feeling good after the first game at 30 minutes, like the minutes restriction should be gone. Yeah. And then it's up to Jamal's discretion in terms of how he wants to handle the lineup. That's an entirely different conversation that we've had multiple times. And I don't feel the need to rehash that right now. But I don't know. Do you feel differently?
No, I asked that question pretty much knowing what your answer would be in terms of the approach of the front office and everything. So, I think that it's just going to come down to minute restriction opening night, and that's going to be what it is. And we're just going to go through that. Markelle was on that 20-minute restriction for, 18 games? Those 18 games that he played. So, wouldn't be surprised if J.I. is, 20 minutes, who knows? I mean, granted, to be fair, we don't know at what point he is deemed, fully back compared to Markelle and how that timeline really works. But, yeah, I would say that we get to the point where Jonathan Isaac plays. What would you think? Maybe 20, 25 games at 20 minutes a game, and then you said All-Star break, but I'm not. That's a little over half, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit over half. I don't know. He's missed 2 years at this point. I just have no idea how they're going to handle that, and and
we don't know how much he's going to be going
the last
game speed either.
3 games. Markelle, or last 5 out of the last 6 games, Markelle exceeded that 20-minute restriction. One game he played 20 minutes and 25 seconds, but his 13th game, 21 minutes, then 20 minutes, 25 seconds, 21 minutes, almost to 22, almost to 24, almost to 24, and then 30 the last game. So it seemed like down the stretch when like worse odds were kind of locked in, they're like, all right, you're good. Go ahead. Like you're free to go at this point. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe you're more in the ballpark than the All-Star break, 20, 25 games. Where does that put us? Like December?
Yeah.
Like maybe by Christmas he's playing 25 or 30. I really don't know. I don't know that we're going to know until one day he's just no longer on a minutes restriction. And that will I would expect that to be announced at some point. But until then, I'm just like, I'm here for the ride. If we get Jonathan Isaac and he's healthy and he looks like the Jonathan Isaac, I'll be fine with 20 minutes. Because you know what we were getting before? Fat zero. So I'll be good with 20 minutes a game if he's the same guy.
I'm just so tired of this conversation.
I really am too. And it sucks because, like, I love J.I., but every time we have to talk about it, I'm like, we're going to say the same thing. Or if I run into people and they're like, hey, what's going on with J.I.? I'm like, no idea. I don't know.
No clue.
Don't know. It's like when my aunt comes up to me, like I saw my aunt today at a barbecue. Oh, how's the podcast doing? It's going good. Yeah, thanks. I don't want to talk about it outside of like this context. It's just one of those things.
A lot of people don't understand it as far as the podcast goes. They're like, some people you tell them you do a podcast, and it's gotten to the point where like everybody does a podcast, and so they come up to you and you're like, how's your podcast? Like, how's your little podcast? Yeah. And it's like, man, you don't get it.
They're never clout.
They're never gonna get it. I mean, I don't say that, but
no, I know. But we don't. But like, maybe a little bit.
But it's not like, you know what I mean. This is obviously off on a tangent here, but like, people just don't get it. And like I said, it's not their fault. I mean, everybody truly does have a podcast, it feels like. And, you've got people that just like, they just do it to do it, and they don't, they record whenever. It's just not the same with us. And I think that your aunt might just think like, how's it going,
And bless her heart, like she's just trying to make conversation, but one of the reasons I started this podcast is because I was tired of having casual Magic conversations. I wanted to talk to someone a couple of times a week who like really knows what they're talking about.
That didn't talk about
kind of
if Dwight Howard was still on the team, or that team hasn't been good since the 90s.
Yo, why are we trading for Giannis? What are we doing out here, y'all? Some of the stuff that you see in some of these groups, but. Anyways, we'll go ahead and move on from this here. So, Media Day for the Orlando Magic, officially coming up on September the 26th. I believe that's a Monday. And then the very next day, Tuesday, starts training camp. Both of those events are going to take place at the new Advent Health Training Center that I believe is getting ready to open in a couple of weeks to the public in Orlando. So, super excited. We are hoping to attend Media Day, but we don't know yet. This would be our first Media Day, so we're hoping to be able to pull that off and attend. Would be really, really cool. But, time will tell. It feels like it's time for us, but, we'll see what happens there.
Mm-hmm. We will.
Luke.
Yes.
Time to take off the gloves, my boy. We're about to break down our favorite 10 Magic players of all time. I'm going to start because I know
with some people... Are you ripping off the whole list?
No. We're going to go one by one here. I'm
okay, one for one.
And work my way up. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I got you. Mm-hmm.
So, in some circles, this is a hot take. To me, it should not be a hot take. And you and I can just kind of discuss that because I think we are really good examples of both sides of this conversation. Uh-huh. So, coming in at number 10 for me, it is a shooting guard out of France, Evan Fournier.
Mm-hmm.
So before I want you to present like the anti-Evan agenda so that I can give the pro-Evan agenda and why I don't feel the way a lot of other people feel about Evan.
Right. Yeah. So I think the anti-Evan agenda, I think that there's some people that take it too far, right? I mean, spoiler alert here, he didn't make my top 10, but 10... to make
not only did he not make your top 10, I got laughed at. I got roasted in the group chat.
That's a fact.
By you and Kevin.
Oh, Kevin went crazy.
When I said that Evan was in my top 10.
Kevin went crazy. And I know that it could have been for the sake of the joke, but Kevin was like, He might not even be on my top.
He does do that.
30.
He does do that.
So I think he was just kind of stoking the fire there. I don't know, but
hard to tell with that KT.
So Jason Schnacks or that too.
Hey,
so
yes,
you know. But no, so the anti-Evan agenda is that you and I talk about this. We've said it many times. He was miscast in his role in Orlando. Good basketball player, but number 2 option shouldn't be. So
not his fault, but fair.
That's fine. It still played into the anti-agenda part of it all, which is he was forced to take big shots, down the stretch. Now, he did hit some big shots. He took a lot of big shots. He missed a lot of big shots. He turned over a lot of not even shots late in the game and caused a lot of heartbreak for me and many Magic fans, even you, in some of those games. You go to bed and you're not thinking nice things about Evan Fournier because
I've been there.
Yes. So for me, man, he caused me too much heartache in those roles. I understand he's miscast. I get it. If he is on a championship level team, he's a 6th man, maybe 5th. So I just think, yes, miscast. However, that doesn't take away the experience of Evan Fournier, which was a lot of high and a lot of low. So I just could not put him top 10 on my favorite.
Yeah, I
also,
get that.
The team mainly sucked. I've got maybe one player on my list that was on the team when they sucked. So people are going to hear this and they're going to have your reaction to. It's essentially the same type of top 10 I gave you in the group chat, but I've had some time to mull it over and it's refined.
Right.
But yeah, so that's my argument against Evan. It's unfortunate, but I would not put him in my top 10.
I get it. So I don't really. I mean, where I stand in terms of this argument when people say like, "Oh, he was a number 1 or number 2 option here when he shouldn't have." Mm-hmm. I'm like, is that his fault or is that like Rob Hennigan's fault for never being able to like put a competent team on the floor in his entire tenure here?
Yeah,
like we don't make the playoffs until like John Hammond and Jeff Weltman come here. So like the 7 seasons that he was here, 5 of those the team is just absolutely terrible. And I understand when people are like, how can a guy be your favorite when the team was just terrible the entire time? And we'll kind of get into that here. So just looking at his stats, 7 seasons in Orlando, 16 points per game, shot 45% from the floor, 37.6% from the three-point line. Also added in 2.9 rebounds, 3 assists a game, a steal, and just 1.8 turnovers. So like people, one of the things they bring up with Evan, like you said, is like the late game turnovers. I'll take a guy taking 13 shots per game, only averaging 2 turnovers. The ball was in his hands a ton when he was here, and we know that. He wasn't like this turnover machine, but it did seem like the ball was in his hands down the stretch of games, and he would turn it over at like the most inopportune time. My argument is, on those teams, who else are you going to put the ball in their hands? You're going to put the ball in Aaron Gordon's hands? You know what he does? 2 consecutive offensive fouls to blow the game in Dallas. That's what happens when you put the ball in his hands. Okay, maybe we can argue DJ Augustine. Yeah, he had the switch on Marc Gasol, hits the 3, game 1 against the Toronto Raptors. But are you going to get that at a DJ Augustine on a consistent basis? Absolutely not. So when we just look down the line of guys that were here, people, you know what other people hold against him that is not his fault? The fact that the Orlando Magic chose Evan Fournier over Victor Oladipo. People see what Victor Oladipo became after leaving the Magic, and they continue to hold that against Evan Fournier when you can make the argument that Oladipo was never going to become that player here in Orlando. I think there is enough evidence to say that. Evan Fournier was the more efficient player at the time. Now, was Rob Hennigan just trying to save his job by acquiring Serge Ibaka and probably would have traded anyone on the team at that point? Yes. But there are just certain things that are held against Evan Fournier that were completely out of his control. He was the second option in our closer just out of necessity. The team, if you guys are new to the team was that bad where Evan Fournier was the best option down the stretch in these games. The dribble handoffs, the high pick and roll with Evan and Vooch that we all hated so much. For most of their tenure here, that was our best option. Now, in the last couple of years when you've got, Markelle Fultz, really not the same thing. It was not the best option at the time, but regardless, it's what they just kind of defaulted to most of the time. What was endearing to me about Evan was the fact that the guy was a fierce competitor. There was never any question here in Orlando that he wanted to win, in my opinion. That him, especially Vooch, Aaron Gordon, desperately wanted to turn things around here in Orlando. They said as much multiple times. I appreciate somebody that is willing to take that shot. There are a lot of guys that would just kind of shy away from the moment. The fact that he was willing to take those shots, I appreciated Evan. He never sugarcoated the way that he felt when he was here in Orlando, about with the media. If he was asked a question, he was never rude, but wasn't going to sugarcoat anything, was going to tell you exactly what he thought. And, he's not come on the podcast, obviously, but on the way out, just the way that he talked about his time in Orlando, jumped in on our little live stream when we were doing that after the trade deadline. Just some other social media interactions that I've had with Evan have made me look at him in a warmer light, I would say. So yeah, Evan Fournier is my 10th favorite Magic player of all time.
Man, producer Kevin just came in our ear basically and said, if you guys take that long with everything, we're gonna be here all night. And I appreciate that.
I had to fiercely defend Evan Fournier. That was not just to Luke. That was for all of the Evan Fournier haters out there.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be this deep the rest of the way because I think we pretty much agree or are fine with each other's selections. Yeah. But Evan Fournier is the one that when it got posted to social media, people were like, what the? When I posted, you guys were like, Evan, what the? So I was like, all right, I got to defend Evan Fournier once and for all.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and with my number 10 here. The last 3 here are from kind of the last, 10 years of Magic basketball, everything else prior, really. Number 10 for me is the Human Torch, Terrence Ross. This is because, just really truthfully, this is because during those bad seasons, if Terrence Ross got hot, it was must-watch TV for me and every Magic fan out there. He was just so much fun, especially in his first year in Orlando. Was that 2016 or something like that? But he just...
That was the 2017 season when we traded him in the Serge. We got him in the Serge Ibaka deal, but he got hurt not that long after we traded for him.
Yeah,
if memory serves
me,
he
played 24
right.
games.
I'm going to pull it up right now.
He played a decent. Yeah. He played 54 in Toronto, 24 in Orlando, so that's pretty good. But then the next season, 2017-18, his first full season with Orlando, he played 24 games. So that's maybe what you're thinking about. But
maybe that was the year that he got
so that's
hurt.
number 10 for me, Terrence Ross. I will say the disclaimer on this list, Jonathan, for me, is that I didn't put anybody on this list that I wasn't old enough or wasn't already watching the team. So this, for me, excludes a lot of players that people would, old heads or maybe even just the today fan who's 17, 18 years old would be like, how do you not have this player on the list? And it's like, cuz I'm not going to act like I've watched as many games of theirs as I have these other guys on the list. It's another part of that whole favorite list, not just to watch.
Disclaimer, Nick Anderson, honorable mention. The highlights that I have gone back and watched of those early 90 teams are of Shaq and of Penny. I haven't gone back and I've spent hours and hours and hours of my life watching Shaq and Penny highlights. I maybe have watched I don't know. There might even be a handful of Nick Anderson highlights on YouTube right now. I'm not taking away from the player. I know he was a good player in his own right. I know in terms of Orlando Magic history, he's a massive deal. But like Luke said, I haven't watched a ton of Nick Anderson.
Yeah. Also, my honorable mention's Darrell Armstrong. So I remember NBA Live.
That's another
NBA
one.
Live 01. The reason is I do remember as far as a little bit of Darrell Armstrong, but he was also one of my favorites on NBA Live 01 with KG on the cover. Big fan. So big fan of old Darrell Armstrong for sure. One of my parents' favorite players. So had some good seasons. Absolutely. Obviously had his years where he was 16 points a game. The one thing I will say, Jonathan, and we'll move on to number 9, is Darrell Armstrong was taking 5.5 threes in the year 2000 a game. 35% clip too. I mean, for 99, 2000.
Ahead of his time.
He was always willing to shoot the three. So shout out Darrell Armstrong, honorable mention. What's your number 8?
I just got to I got to get to my number 9. Yeah. I just got to throw in one thing. You put Terrence Ross in Evan Fournier's role he is exponentially more hated than Evan Fournier, or at least should be, because he's not as good of a player. Just want to throw that out there. We love Terrence because he excelled in his role.
That's fine. That's fine, but unfortunately...
Okay, you don't want to talk about it? It's fine. Don't want to talk about it?
Listen,
I get it.
I told you, he's miscast. I don't think he would be, in my top 15. He'd be in my top 20. But there's a lot of people that wouldn't put him on a list at all. So I'm there right in the middle, I'd like to think, as far as Evan Fournier.
You are wrong. They are wrong.
As far as Evan Fournier goes.
My number 9 is the boy J.J. Redick. So J.J. Redick I hated when he was in college.
Everybody
for Duke.
Did.
But I was very excited when the Orlando Magic drafted J.J. Redick in 2006. So career with the Orlando Magic, we have 9.2 points per game here, 43% from the floor, 39.8, basically 40% from the three-point line. What is so endearing to me about J.J. Redick is obviously first couple of, it took him a while to get established in the league, and then was an integral part of those Orlando Magic playoff teams in the late aughts. Obviously a big part of the 2008-2009 run to the finals, then a big part the following year going to the Eastern Conference Finals. J.J. Redick, I have definitely become even more of a J.J. Redick fan since he started to work in the media, after his playing career. Obviously, great podcast, great personality, and everything like that. But yeah, J.J. Redick, just a guy that worked his butt off to carve out a role in the NBA for himself, and was a part of some great Magic teams.
Yeah, I like that. He'll be on my list here soon. My number 9, actually a current Magic player, because if we're going favorites, I can't lie. And this player,
number
9 on my list. I'm predicting the future as well during this, but he's my favorite. It is Win Daddy Carter Jr.
He did it. He did it.
Wendell Carter Jr., man. I love him.
The daddy.
Everybody knows it. I love him. He's already number 9 on the list. And don't get me wrong. We might look at this in 5 years. Maybe WCJ somehow slips out of the hands of the Magic. In a few years, I'll be crushed on that day. You'll need to check on me if it happens. But 5 years down the road, we could be having a different conversation. But as it stands today, he brought me a lot of joy this last season. Brought me a lot of joy. He's already showing improvement. I think with his contract and how it's worked, the way that he established himself last year, I think he's going to be around for a while around this organization, and he should be. So with that, he's number 9.
I can respect that. I think that there's at worst, he's probably an Evan Fournier level player, for the organization. Just if we're just talking about how good they were in their times in Orlando. Right now, you probably could even argue, this season, he had a better season than any season Evan Fournier had, potentially. Evan had some pretty good seasons,
Evan had some 17, 18 points a game.
18 points a game, somewhere around there, so, pretty close right now. But I could see by the time it's all said and done, him, having a better match. I mean, the team is going to, dear God, we hope they're going to be better than the Evan Fournier teams here in Orlando, so I'm not mad at that. Next, at 8, Vooch. The Vooch, Nikola Vucevic. Obviously, part of those Evan Fournier, Aaron Gordon, Nikola Vucevic teams that everybody obviously holds in such high esteem, as we've been talking about. But no, this was a guy who, obviously, rookie season in Philadelphia is part of the Dwight Howard deal. We don't know what we're getting, right? Rookie season averaged 5.5 points per game, 4.8 rebounds for the 76ers. And then next year, just a walking double-double for most of his time here in Orlando. And I was really hoping, even though we didn't draft him, if you think about Vooch, I mean, we can go 20 years from now. People are going to talk about Nikola Vucevic, be like, oh yeah, that guy, played for the Magic. I think that is probably what he will end up being remembered for. But I wish he would have had the opportunity to end his career here. I know we're all very happy with the way that deal turned out. Franz Wagner got another pick coming, obviously Wendell Carter. But yeah, just Vooch, a guy that you just knew what you were going to get from him every single night. And yeah, especially, making the couple of all-star teams that he did here in Orlando. And then finally making it to the playoffs with that team in 2018, 2019. I will always have a special place in my heart for that team and for Vooch. And he's top 5 Orlando Magic player of all time. We've talked about that. I hope at some point, he'll be in the Orlando Magic Hall of Fame. I hope they retire his number. Love me some Vooch.
Okay, so for me, where are we at now? 8?
Yes.
Yeah. So my number 8 is a guy that gave me one of my favorite memories in the last 5 years. Absolutely. We've already mentioned him once, but DJ Augustine is my number 8. In Orlando, in the playoffs especially, in Orlando, just to look at his playoff numbers with the Magic, in 18, 19, 13 points a game, on 47% shooting from 3 in that game, and he was taking 4 a game. And then the next year, 13 points a game on 47% again, 3-point shooting on 3.5 attempts, a little bit over that a game. He just, again, this being a favorite list, he was a guy that I, just trusted when it came down to it, was able to believe that he was going to, do the right thing with the ball. Let's see what he was at, like 1.5, turnovers a game and about 4 assists. So I just trusted him down the stretch. He was a true vet for this team and ice cold when it mattered there against, shout out Marc Gasol. So he does come in at number 8 for me.
I will forever remember on the ESPN broadcast, Ryan Ruocco, Augustine for 3, he takes, you bet. I will remember that call for the rest of my life, and just obviously like losing my freaking mind when he hit that shot. It also includes
one of the most fun games in a long time.
Definitely. Also includes Evan Fournier screaming in DJ's ear right after. And one day, I promise on everything that I love, I will find out what Evan said to DJ in that moment. All right, coming up at number 7 for me. Now we're getting into like guys that really contributed to very special times here in Orlando, the team being just exceptional.
Right.
Rashard Lewis, Sweet Lou. Okay, obviously massive part of the Magic making it to the finals in 2009. Another great year. The following year, they go to the Eastern Conference Finals. Then didn't work out in the Eastern Conference Finals. He gets traded the next season to Washington for Gilbert freaking Arenas, and we know how all of that went down. But just Rashard didn't want to play the power forward position when he came to Orlando, but Stan went to him and said, hey, in order for us to be great, this is what you're going to have to do. He bought into that role. He was incredible. Should have been an all-star. Or, I'm sorry, it was Hito that... I always forget that it was Hito that didn't make the all-star team in 2009. Rashard was an all-star, but the 2 huge shots against Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals, how can you not love Rashard Lewis?
Yeah, absolutely. Can't hate on Rashard at all. He is on my list. He'll come up soon as well. Number 6 for me is a guy who maybe didn't contribute to where you would normally think a number 6 on someone's favorite all-time list goes, but I tie the memories in with it in terms of how good the team was at the time, and that is the Polish Hammer. I hold him in high regard. I love him. He's a guy that speaks good on the team, and he didn't do too much on the court, but I always held him in high regard. It's crazy that you can love a player that much who averaged like 4 points a game with the Magic, but it's just I loved him. I loved him, and so he is absolutely deserving of being on this list.
The Tot, as I like to affectionately refer to him as. The Tot. Okay. He was regarded by some people as one of the best backup centers in the league. Just did exactly what the Magic needed him to do when he came in, and backup center gets you to the NBA Finals. Can do a lot worse than that. Coming up for me at number 6, the Turk, Hito Turkoglu. So like I mentioned a few moments ago, was robbed his All-Star bid in 2008, 2009. A few years ago, what was that, like 2016, when we saw like all of the Atlanta Hawks starting 5, or at least most of the starting 5, make the finals, or make the All-Star game. What is wrong with me?
There you go.
This should have been one of those occurrences. I think Kyle Korver made the All-Star team because they know they robbed Hito Turkoglu. Like, we got to give one of these white guys on a good team an All-Star bid. So they went with Kyle Korver. But it should have been Hito Turkoglu. Just a guy, like the ultimate no-no-yes guy, where towards the end of the game, you're like, no, what are you doing? Yes, oh my God, Hito Turkoglu. And for those reasons, Hito Turkoglu. the throwing up the jersey, hitting the big shot against Philadelphia in the playoffs, during that the NBA Finals run. Turk, just one of my favorites.
Okay, so that was your 6?
That was my 6. So
this is my 6 now.
This is your 6th, yeah.
Yeah. So Gortat, I think I might have misspoke too. Gortat was my 7.
Right. They'll forgive you.
And then number 6 is Vucevic. So this is where he slides in on my list. We've already talked about Vooch, what he was to the franchise. Light in a dark time, obviously, with his all-star appearance and everything like that. Gotta love Vucevic. Got him at 6.
Next up for me at 5, the Mighty Mouse, the Meerkat, Jameer Nelson, my dog, Jameer. Obviously, starting point guard for the finals run and the finals run was Ray Olsen, but that team most of the year until he gets hurt, made the All-Star team that year. 16.7 points per game, was shooting that thing 50% from the floor, 45% from the 3-point line. Injures his shoulder, comes back in the NBA Finals. Did not start. He did not take Ray Olsen's place, is kind of myth now against some Orlando Magic fans, but basically took Anthony Johnson's minutes off of the bench in the NBA Finals. And yeah, you went against Kobe in the NBA Finals. I mean, you were a young team. Dwight was 22, 23. Things are going to happen, but Jameer was just always like this the consummate professional here in Orlando. Still comes back and shows love. I remember he was at Game 3 in 2019. The playoffs against Toronto, getting everybody hyped before that game. Just love me some Jameer Nelson.
Okay, so for me, my number 5 is JJ Redick. So those ones that we've already really talked about, don't need to talk about them again. But JJ Redick, you already kind of recapped his time in Orlando. Sick that he ended up getting dealt. Is what it is, but he is number 5 on my list.
Coming in at number 4 for me is the Penny Hardaway, Anthony Hardaway. So in his 6 seasons in Orlando, 19 points per game, shot 47% from the floor, also added 4.7 rebounds, 6 assists. My favorite Penny Hardaway stat is made first team All-NBA in his 2nd season, with just shows you how ridiculous he was. 6'7" point guard. Just that doesn't happen. Guys making really any All-NBA team in their 2nd year in the season. And, of course, he does. Thinking of Penny, you think of, the armband, you think of the pinstripes, you think of him and Shaq, you think of just the iconic pinstripes. How can you look beyond that? Penny Hardaway, just special player. Injuries robbed him of a Hall of Fame career.
All right, number 4 for me is Hedo Turkoglu. And then you can go ahead with number 4 because we've spoke on it. But yeah, my next 4 really, Jonathan, are kind of the core, honestly, of that finals run in 2009.
Oh, of the finals run. Okay, so number 3, Shaquille O'Neal. Not for Shaquille O'Neal. I don't even know that I'm an Orlando Magic fan. So obviously Orlando was the closest team to me growing up, but really, even from a young age, the reason that I started rooting for the Magic is because my oldest brother was a massive Shaquille O'Neal fan, and when Shaq got drafted to the Magic, my brother living in New Jersey was like, that's my team. So, growing up, he had the old school, pinstripe jerseys, just obviously love Shaquille O'Neal. Second best player in Orlando Magic history. I feel the need to say that. We'll talk about who the greatest is right now, but Shaquille O'Neal just kind of is, when you think of the Orlando Magic, just speaking generally, you think of Shaquille O'Neal, you think of the pinstripes. Without Shaq, I don't really know where this franchise would be at this point, and his historic significance for the franchise cannot be overstated. Number 3, Shaquille O'Neal.
Don't let him let you hear. He can't hear that from you because he still thinks he runs the organization. So,
well, him and Dennis Scott. If you haven't heard.
Apparently, him and 3D. So, number 3 for me is Rashard Lewis. Like I said, this is just the guys that kind of led us. Rashard Lewis is my number 3.
Number 2, I've got Dwight Howard, the greatest player in Orlando Magic history. although it was a messy divorce, when you just go through his resume, which we've done that multiple times on this podcast, not going to go through all of that right now, but to me, it's like the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year awards back to back to back. No one has ever done that in the history of the NBA. And then at 23 years old, leading the Orlando Magic to the NBA Finals. For us and what we have witnessed as Magic fans, like that's the pinnacle. It's never gotten any better than that. And for a lot of those reasons, I just have such great memories of Dwight Howard. He's my second favorite Magic player of all time.
All right, number 2 for me, I was sitting thinking about this, and I was like, man, who do I put 2 out of these guys that I really loved? I was really debating between, him, Rashard, and Hito, to be honest. And so I was like, well, he was the right-hand man to Dwight Howard, running point guard. So Jameer Nelson is my number 2, and rightfully so.
Last but not least for me, at number 1, he wore number 1, the Mac, the T-Mac, Tracy McGrady. I started liking the Orlando Magic, just like the branding and everything, because of my older brother, but Tracy McGrady is what made me fall in love with the game of basketball. Unfortunately for me, it was really Tracy McGrady's last season here in Orlando. But when I tell you, like, everything that I wanted to do on a basketball court to try to emulate Tracy McGrady, I had the armband. I had the armband on my leg like T-Mac. I cried the day that he got traded. I didn't have a Magic jersey at that time. I begged my mom to drive me to the mall, and we got a Tracy McGrady Orlando jersey the day that he was traded to the Houston Rockets. And, he's arguably the most talented player we've ever had in Orlando, definitely the best scorer we've ever had in Orlando. And, just love me some T-Mac.
Do you still have the jersey or no?
I don't have the jersey anymore. Unfortunately, I have a picture of me in the jersey, but I no longer have that jersey. It wouldn't fit anymore anyways.
Well, yeah, I guess.
But, I could have passed it on to my kid, but, don't have it.
Number 1, thanks, everybody knows at this point. Yeah. Sorry about that. We'll cry together later. Number 1 on my list, obviously everybody understands at this point, it is Dwight Howard. So, again, I didn't have guys like T-Mac and Shaq, and then those type of guys from the 90s and like early 2000s, those first couple years of 2000s, just because, like I said, I genuinely wasn't a fan of the Magic then. If you would have asked me at that point when I was 5-6 years old, Luke, who's your favorite NBA team? I'd be like, well, probably the Orlando Magic, but I couldn't tell you anything about them really. And then, Dwight Howard comes in, and that's really when my fandom for the Magic took off, was when the Magic drafted Dwight Howard. So
good times.
The old heads probably hated this episode. So
100%. But you just have to recognize that there's different generations of teams and fandom. Obviously, like I said, I wasn't old enough to remember Shaq and Penny, but just because of the historical significance that they have, and the fact that they were both disgusting, and I've just watched hours and hours and hours of their highlights, so I have a level of appreciation for them. It's not the same as T-Mac, who I literally got to see all the time. And I do have a feeling that in the next 5 to 7 years, Luke, I'm going to have some guys creep into that top 10.
It's going to be hard not
even
to.
Take over some of these guys. You have Wendell at 10. You have any idea how hard it was for me to not – excuse me. I didn't mean to offend you.
Respect the list.
You know how hard it was for me to keep Jonathan Isaac off of this list?
Yeah.
But it's just we just haven't seen you on the floor enough. He there's a very special place in my heart for Jonathan Isaac, but – to me,
if this is 2 years ago, he makes the list, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely makes the list. Well, and that was because, just the trajectory that he was on, when he got hurt New Year's Day 2020, we thought the dude was winning depoy. There was not anything you could tell us. We were checking NBA stats every single night, seeing if it was him or AD that was the block leader at the time. They were just flip-flopping, going back and forth. So, but yeah, Paolo wins a title for us here and wins Finals MVP, he's catapulted to number 1. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. So, hey, if you disagree, let us know. Let us know on social media. Like we said, you can find us on TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all over the place. Here on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, if you disagree or you agree, let us know who your favorite players are in the comments below. We want to hear that kind of stuff. then what I like about this conversation, it's just a matter of preference. It could be heartstrings. It could be some really weird reason that they're your favorite player of all time. Who cares?
Well, you initially had done this with rankings with the Magic Report, Oscar.
And with Orlando Magic Report and Orlando Magic HQ. I meant to mention that earlier, so thank you.
Yeah. No, but this is one of those things that, yes, you can post it online as far as the top 10, but if you don't hear somebody's explanation for like those guys really in like the 6 to 10 range, then you can get eaten alive in the comments by people who are just like in outrage by it. But like we've said, and we've continued to say, and I'm sure we'll say it in the comments, this is our personal preference. I will say, while I was going through this, I got a laugh at some of the names that I saw, like players that I don't know that I forgot, but I saw their name and I was like, wow. And I just like remembered one of them, Devin Marble. I saw that name and I was like, man, if that doesn't remind me of
that boy was going to be nice.
Yeah.
Where did he come from? Out of Iowa?
Something
was
like that.
Devin Marble, I think.
So Devin Marble, Jason Smith, just names that you don't think about too much.
Oh my gosh, the mid-range guard. Jason
exactly,
Smith.
Yeah. Before Markelle Fultz, there was Jason Smith from the mid-range. So
yeah.
I
mean, we can go back like Travis Diener, a guy that I worked at Publix for a time, and when some of the guys I worked in the grocery department, and when some of the guys found out that I was a big Magic fan, this guy, his name was Andy, he felt the need to sit me down, and he's like, do you have any idea how good NBA players are? Like, even the worst NBA player, he's like, you have any idea how good they are? I was like, I mean, I have some frame of reference, like they're in the NBA. He's like, I got to tell you, I went to a Magic game years ago, and I watched a guy by the name of Travis Diener. He's like, I watched this guy warm up for 20 minutes, did not miss a single shot. He's like, came back out. He's like, when they're doing like the like lining up before the game, going through layups and all that, he's like, again, did not miss a single shot. He's like, Travis Diener is incredible. And Travis Diener hit like the game winner in like the basketball tournament like a few years ago, I think. So him, one of my best friends growing up, former co-host of the Six Man Show, Will Robles. His family is Puerto Rican, so growing up, they were massive Carlos Arroyo fans.
Say that, yeah.
So I always loved Carlos Arroyo as a kid.
Yeah.
Trying to think if there are, more.
There's some fun. There's some weird ones, like
just obscure
the fact that
Magic
Ben
players.
Gordon played for the Magic as well.
Hey, Brandon Jennings. Let's forget Orlando ever happened. Brandon Jennings.
The duo, Brandon Jennings and Ersan Ilyasova. Bringing it. Chris.
Bro, when I tell you I was watching Ersan Ilyasova highlights that day, oh my dude, we were going through it, bro.
Yeah, you know, Chris Duhon. I called him Chris Doodoo for short.
Wow.
You mentioned him, Anthony Johnson.
Interesting.
That man, talk about a frame.
Johnson.
Anthony Johnson.
Hey, Diesel.
Yeah.
Straight up Diesel.
No, there's so many. I encourage you guys, if you guys have a couple minutes.
Deron Lamb.
Yeah.
Yo, Deron Lamb was a hidden gem in 2K back in the day.
Yeah.
I would sub Deron Lamb in corner threes all day. One of the, when we think of players who have wore number one in Orlando, like right now I think of Jonathan Isaac, but we also think of Tracy McGrady, Penny Hardaway. Deron Lamb, forgotten number one wearer in Orlando Magic history.
Oh, I probably would honestly have this guy honorable mention on my list as well, but Ryan Anderson. Big fan of Ryan Anderson.
Rhino.
Yeah, so loved him. I encourage you guys, go look at the Orlando Magic all-time roster on Wikipedia. Go through that list. It's every Magic player to ever wear a jersey.
Dominique Wilkins?
Wow.
No? Patrick Ewing? No?
Yeah, Patrick Ewing.
Anybody?
Love that. But it's a fun time. Take a little trip down memory lane. You'll see some names.
Ben
and
Wallace?
You'll just kind of laugh for a good 10 seconds about some of the names that you see because you totally forget how much they caused you distress. So
I don't know. They gave me a lot of pain, but something about that 2018-2019 team will just always be very, very special to me. I don't care. Don't care. Had some of your favorites, DJ, Terrence. So, yeah. Hey, we put the list, and someone who was like, I'm so glad that Aaron Gordon isn't on this list.
Who would ever?
Hey, at one point, man, we thought that boy was going to be the guy.
Oscar's list, by the way.
Nobody likes him anymore.
Oscar's list, by the way.
I don't want to attack people's personal preferences. I don't want to get into that. All I will say, without spoiling too much, Bismack at number 1 is wild.
It was like Bismack at 1, wild. Alfred at 2. I'm sorry, Oscar.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah.
I love you.
Oscar. Hey, and this is the thing. It's everybody's preference. But people are allowed to like different players.
And he did it, and he also did say, and clarify in the comments, he hasn't been a Magic fan like for that long. So he's got,
like 10 years or less.
Right. So before finals, I think, really, before the finals. So I didn't see Dwight on that list. Maybe he just hates Dwight. I don't know.
I think even after the finals, I think he came in when things were about to get rough. And I could be mistaken. Yeah. But regardless,
Oscar,
people are allowed to like
2,
their favorite players. Like, whatever. Go for it. That's
absolutely.
Fine.
But,
some of us get roasted when we say Evan Fournier.
Bismack Brickhands.
Somewhat, bro. Unbelievable. That dude could not. I've never really criticized a player's ability to just catch a basketball until I met Bismack Biyombo.
Yeah.
Mo Bamba's got a little bit of that to him also, but Bismack was the worst. I was like, I can't believe I'm criticizing the fact that a guy can't catch the basketball.
Yeah, so. It was rough.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just drop passes alone would take him far down the list on rankings.
Yeah, 100%.
But, listen, I had a lot of fun doing this. Like Jonathan said, drop everything in the comments. Roast us. We really don't care. So just do that.
We're used to that.
Yeah. Just do that, and we'll watch it on YouTube. Quick plug. Give us a little like there. As
like, subscribe, notification.
If you've hung on this long through the episode, as this point where we're just like talking genuinely how we would talk
Kevin's
outside of recording for sure. Yeah, Kevin's like, land the plane, land it. Yeah. Just like it.
Kevin
please.
Tucker, big fan of Microsoft Flight Simulator, by the way, if you guys didn't know that.
Oh, we'll fly over your house, probably for a fee.
All right, we're going to end with that. For Luke Sylvia, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You guys have been listening to The Sixth Man Show. We will catch you guys next time. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!